Welcome back. Before the break, we spelled out how Trump and Barr are putting, in my view, not only their thumbs, but the whole fist on the scale of justice and playing politics with the law. Now, I'm going to introduce our legal panel to discuss. Jim Kousouros, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sitting on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Associations. He also frequently lectures at both New York Law School and the Bar Associations in Queens and New York City. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Both men defense attorneys, but formerly prosecutors as well. I'm going to start things off here with a warning from the president and then from me here. This is from the former Solicitor General of the United States, Neil Katyal.
I think this country has a robust tradition of law, and yes, the president's gotten away with so much, but I have news for him. The law is going to come after him. What he's doing is lawless. It's unprecedented. It breaks every rule in our constitutional democracy, and the law will find a way to catch up with him.
First off, guys, I'm going to get into both what happened with about 2,500 former federal prosecutors, as well as also apparently like 1,000 sitting judges in a moment. But the statement from Katyal, is he being more hopeful that at someday justice will catch up, that there's an inevitability to it? Or do you believe that that maybe used to be the case, but the last 3 years have proven if a political party isn't willing to join in holding a person to account, we've learned the hard way that the executive power of a president is such that if a person has no moral guardrails, we're learning the hard way he can do whatever he wants.
I don't know what he was referring to because the president has done so many things. If you're talking about what's gone on recently, it's an interesting thing. I mean, he is actually using his power as president lawfully. He can pardon anybody he wants.
But he's interfering, and I want to get into the pardons with both of you guys because I'm sure you've had lots of clients who've done things a lot less offensive that are not going to be waiting by the phone here to either have their be pardoned or have sentences commuted. But the premise is the president is actively getting involved in ongoing investigations. Both you guys were prosecutors. The idea that somehow Maine Justice, Department of Justice, is superseding. I mean, I had on former federal prosecutors guys, and I said, is this unusual? They're like, no, this is unprecedented. We've never seen, you know, whether they were at SDNY or Eastern District Court, we've never seen Maine Justice come in on top of it. We've never seen basically somebody like a Giuliani having a direct pipeline to justice where they're going after accusers. We've never seen all of a sudden DOJ now talking about changing sentencing guidelines midstream. They've never seen any of this. So the idea of the sovereign district of New York and all this, that's just a theory, they say.
Look, it's different. Let me tell you this. Any prosecutor will tell you that in a high-profile case, when it's time to write the sentence memorandum and make a recommendation, the line prosecutors might think, well, we should ask for 36 months, but they're going to clear it with their superiors. Their superiors may say, no, you have to ask for the 60 months. You have to ask for a guideline sentence.
And just to stay for a second, it's not like they're making up a thin air. There's guidelines that are basically the lane they have to stay in.
Well, there's guidelines, and they're calculated by probation, and then the defense gets to object to them. My point is, once the final guidelines are there, those are the applicable guidelines that you believe to be right. Then you make a recommendation. Should it be a guideline sentence? Should it be above? Should it below? There's no problem with superiors, even DOJ, consulting on a high-profile case before the recommendation goes out and saying, look, you're asking for too little. No, you're gonna do this. What is unprecedented is for the prosecutors to submit their sentence memorandum, to make a request for a particular sentence, and then 3 or 4 days later,
the day DOJ, after the president sends a tweet out saying there's a miscarriage of justice. And by the way, I should say, a jury convicted Roger Stone here on multiple counts. Okay, I want to read for you Mayo, I read the basic headlines that came out of that letter from the 2,500 former federal prosecutors, Republicans and Democrats from multiple administrations. Donald Ayer, he's the former Deputy Attorney General under George Herbert Walker Bush. Clearly, nobody will be considered with a bleeding heart liberal, okay? This is what Ayer wrote here, and look at the language he uses. He wrote this in The Atlantic, and again here, the title of it is Bill Barr Must Resign. And I quote, "Given our national faith and trust in a rule of law no one can subvert, it is not too strong to say that Bill Barr is un-American, and now, from his perch as Attorney General, he is in the midst of a root and branch attack on the core principles that have guided our justice system, and especially our Department of Justice. Since the 1970s, Bill Barr is not a place, America is not a place, he writes, that anyone, including Trump voters, should want to go. It is a banana republic where all are subject to the whims of a dictatorial president and his henchmen." Again, this is not an Obama guy, this is not a Clinton guy, this is a Bush guy. And by the way, I happen to agree with him. I don't think it's hyperbole that as we sit here right now, the Attorney General of the United States, I believe, is far more invested in protecting the president's political and personal aspirations in vendettas than he is for the preservation of the rule of law, upholding jury verdicts here, and defending the office for which he represents, which is, as a branch, the Justice Department. I believe that he serves the president more than he does the Department of Justice, and that's why we're seeing resignations. That's why we're hearing threats of major walkouts. That's why 1,000 judges, they postponed their meeting, but they were all going to have an emergency meeting about what's going on right now. I've never seen anything like it. You guys have forgotten more than me, Mayo, but I don't think he's exaggerating. Those are the stakes.
Oh, I don't think so, but I think that you have to go back to when Obama was president. We were talking about fast-track legislation, and we had a conversation where I said I was against that no matter what. And when you stop and look at where we are now, most people do not understand or don't take the time to contemplate what happens when the other side wields the same power. So that fast track was never passed. Now you have a president who basically... I believe
something, Mayo, and maybe I'm naive. I believe if a Democratic president tried for self-gain to basically void convictions of his buddies or anyone that is in the ambit, and to go after law enforcement for bringing cases that the Democrats en masse, not one like Mitt Romney for Republicans, would say, that's not American.
Well, thus far, but we don't know. This is setting an entirely new norm. So who knows what a Democrat is even going to be going forward. Who knows what the next Republican wave will be. So they may think that Trump didn't go far enough. So we're getting to the point where now you retaliate against people who are your perceived enemies, sometimes not even enemies. Look at Vindman. He was subpoenaed. He didn't voluntarily say, hey, I have all this information. And he and his twin brother totally washed out, destroyed effectively. So now we're looking at uncharted territory where basically you have a person saying, I am the law. So
and
essentially
by the way,
that
he's
person's
only
saying
going to be
he's a
encouraged.
king.
Barr, let's talk about the AG for a second. I don't believe for a minute that he's going to follow through with this threat to walk, because now this is the line that's been crossed.
I don't believe that any of the hyperbole is true. The whole, I can't do my job, knock it off, and, you know, I mean, it's very clear what's going on here. And, you know, the problem is that it lessens the public's confidence in the rule of law. You know, it is so damaging to our country. And to your point, Mayo, the polarization that has now occurred and is sustained in our country very well may result in the next guy doing the same thing. Because these
and
two
just one thing that, I'm sorry, you guys work for DAs. Sure, they're elected. You didn't know the ADAs, what their politics were. You didn't know if you went into, you know, in a U.S. Attorney's office, right, that you didn't know their political agendas, all of them up and down the line. They were apolitical for a reason. And by the way, I believe that, just like I believe a lot of lawmakers believe in the right thing and the rule of law. So to me, part of part of the damage that's inflicted isn't just the destruction of norms, but that everybody gets painted with a brush, that they're all like the president, and every basically AG is like Barr. I don't believe that. I believe we're in a better place than that, but I believe that's the shine on it right now. All right, when we come back from the break with these guys, why many people are saying the president's use of his pardon power is nothing but an abuse of power. We're going to talk about that with these guys next.